the front row, you might get hypnotized. No, joke, no, I'm just kidding. So I'd like to thank you all for my brief introduction. I do want to state that, a few years ago, I knew basically jack diddly about hypnosis. I will be the first person to use it. Oh, okay. Sorry. Wow. That got very quickly. So, just a few years ago, I was definitely not a hypnotherapist. I was many things. That was not one of them. I did not actually get into hypnosis until I was actually in medical school. I was briefly in medical school for a time. Something happened during that time, which, it basically ended up that I ended up in therapy. And suggestions came about hypnosis, and I was not having any of it. I just was not interested. I also found out that the worst thing you can do to a client that you're not surprised that you've just met for the first time and they don't know you're a hypnotist is say, "Hey, I'm a hypnotist." Yeah, don't do that. It'll freak out anybody who doesn't already know. In my case, I promote it if you know I'm a hypnotist when you come to me. So in this situation, I was like not having it, and eventually, several months later, I ended up hitting rock bottom, and I said, well, maybe Bill, the therapist who suggested it, was onto something. I ended up learning, briefly going on to one of those, I literally took a class that I found on Groupon, just to learn what people were going to do to me, assuming I went to go see a hypnotist. And that was, that was 2015. And, well, that's going to not listen to me. Okay, there we are. So, and this is what I've done since then. That was 2015. In 2016, I saw my first hypnotist. After I got very, very confident in this, ended up taking that little Groupon class. Enjoyed learning about it so much that I decided that I wanted to learn more. Ended up going, taking more classes, actually did work with a hypnotherapist who actually cured me of several little problems. I shouldn't say the word cure, but we overcame a whole lot of stuff much faster than many years of several other types of psychology and therapy that I've been in. And so eventually I tried to enroll in medical school, and I realized I really, really hated medical school, and I really, really liked hypnosis. So nowadays I have 1,000 hours of hypnosis education, and I'm hopefully going to end up as a clinical psychologist, we're all hoping, and then I'm going to be continuing to use that in my practice. But right now what we have so far is, what I've done so far has been, I don't even know why I'm looking up there, I know my own history. I went to HMI, Hypnosis Motivation Institute is the only accredited college of hypnotherapy in the United States, I think in the world. Don't quote me on the world part, I do know in the US. From there I actually did my class, I did really, really well, ended up getting an honors diploma as opposed to just a standard diploma. And I did it so quickly that my advisor said, hey, you still have a lot more hours, or a lot more time before you technically graduate, because I just did everything, I literally was doing this 14 hours a day. And he said, you already got honors, your next step is the Director's Award, you want to try for it? I was like, I'm not going to get that Director's Award. Well, I did in fact get the Director's Award, and I then got the Founders Club Award, and I got the Founders Club, which was very, I found that one out a week before graduation. Actually, no, I didn't even find that out a week before graduation. I found out, it was about a week before graduation that I had just gotten the hardest award that they had. From there, I did my internship, which was also through HMI, because it just makes everything easier. That's where the clinical supervisors are, and so I did it there. That's another 200-hour clinical internship. I then went and got certified through the Hypnotherapy Union, the Hypnotists Union, Hypnotherapy Union. There are several different levels. At the time, there was level 1 through 4. Now it's like 1 through 3 because they removed the certified hypnotist level because it was useless. And I ended up coming up the second highest level. The only way I can get higher than that is basically get a clinical license. So we went off to that. Where am I? Oh yes, that's where I am. I am currently a medical hypnotherapist at After Hours Hypnotherapy. It is the last time I saw the statistics, we were the 3rd highest ranked hypnotherapy practice in the southeastern United States. I think we might be it might be overall in the U.S. I don't know how, but somehow that happened. I do know we were at least number 3 in the southeastern United States. I am a member of a whole bunch of societies, from APA Division 30, which is American Psychological Association. They have the Society for Psychological Hypnosis, American Hypnosis Association, and I also am a member of Society for Clinical and Experimental Hypnosis. So, there we go. I'm currently working on, as in I just came back from the first part of my certification for a research hypnosis, certification, what was it called? Certification in academic and research applications of hypnosis. We don't actually call it that. We're like, you're getting your research hypnosis certification. Because that's a long phrase. Let's see. All right, okay. So, sorry, there is a little bit of audience participation, and I don't want y'all Googling or using your phones, because I do see some of y'all on your phones. So, what does anybody think of hypnosis? You can raise your hand. Y'all can participate, you too. I don't know if you know, Haley. Does anybody know anything about hypnosis at all? I know y'all have covered this in class at least for a few minutes. Yes, sir.
Works better on people that are susceptible to
No, that's not entirely true, but that is a very common one, and we actually were going to be discussing that a little bit too. Anybody else?
High suggestibility.
High suggestibility, we do discuss a little bit about these suggestibility tests. So there is a kind of like bell curve-ish type area. We do have a slide on that, because I think you've seen the slide about that. So anything else? Ma'am?
You can't be hypnotized if you don't want to be.
That's a good one, because I actually have a slide on that, because I have the 8 myths of hypnosis, and that relates to one of the ones I'm doing. Anything else? If not, I can just move on to the next slide. No? Okay. All right. Everybody stand up, unless you have some type of weird issue that you can't stand up, then you can just raise your hand. That's cool. Yeah, cool. This is actually, I'm not hypnotizing anybody. This is just not even a demonstration on anything. If anybody does want to be hypnotized, you can save it for the end of the thing. This is just a point that I'm trying to make. Okay, the first one is that if you know you've been hypnotized, like in a stage show, sit down. Okay, just checking. Okay, have you ever gotten lost in a good book? Please sit down. Wow, there are a lot of readers in here. I love it. Cool, that's fine. What about a movie or TV show? You got lost in it so bad that wow, we got a whole bunch of people out to sit down. And your parents, are like, where are you? All right. Cool, we're doing good. How about music? Those are great. Oh, now we're dropping more people. We only have a few people standing. It's like the last 2 people standing. How about had a runner's high or got lost in a hobby? I know Haley likes to bicycle, so that would be an option too. You ever had a runner's high? Okay. Anything that's called gotten in the zone. Okay, good. I didn't even have to get through all my options. But yeah, I was like, okay, so, that was highway hypnosis, that next one there, and I'm sure almost every one of y'all have gotten it. I'm notorious for that. I have to be very careful. Okay, so the question is what is hypnosis? If you ask a dozen hypnotists and hypnotherapists what it is, you're probably going to get at least a dozen different answers. However, the answer is that what is hypnosis that is up on the screen right now is actually the one that's accepted by APA Division 30. This was published by Dr. Elkins, who I just met last week. He's a really intimidating guy, because he's such a name in this. But you can just go over and see that. It's basically what we got here. I think y'all probably can read that yourselves. If not, it's on the slides, and Dr. Williams has a copy of the slide. So we've got some hypnosis myths. First one, hypnosis is a magical power. Not particularly, it's not particularly a magical power. All of y'all have basically admitted to every single one of you people who sat down, which ended up being all of y'all, all those were forms of hypnosis. It's whether or not you recognized it or not. Every person here has been able to do that. Everybody here, in theory, could learn how to hypnotize somebody else, right, and encourage that state. I wouldn't recommend you going off and hypnotizing your friends just yet, mostly because you aren't trained. You know, try to save it for when you're a little bit more trained. So it's completely normal and completely natural. We do have a little bit of a bad reputation, but it's, like I said, completely normal. Only weak, another myth, only weak-willed and unintelligent people can be hypnotized. Not so much. Actually, some of the research actually shows that the opposite is true. The more intelligent you are, the more creative you are, likely the more and quicker you're going to be hypnotized or have higher suggestibility. Why that is, I'm not 100% sure. But there is something to be said for that. I'm assuming that just the act of studying can be very similar to trance work and some of the things that are required. So I'm always making the assumption that that's probably it, but I really have no idea. And none of the literature has really gotten into it and been able to confirm, going, this is this. We just know that there's a correlation, but a pretty decent one. Another one, people can enter trance and not awaken. Hypnosis has been practiced for several thousand years. As far as I know, we've never lost anybody. This is apparently a very real fear. Some of my clients come in and go, hey, what happens if something happens to you? Well, quite frankly, if I am in my chair, I'll be out just a little bit here, but I'm epileptic, so there is always the chance of a seizure. But if I go up and I have a seizure, it's, God forbid something really bad happens, and I go unconscious or whatever, and you're in my chair and you're in trance, you're going to come out of it. Whether that's in 30 seconds, whether that's in a few hours. I just hope that if you do come out of it and you see me on the floor, hopefully you'll call 911 and get me some help, just in case. But you will come out eventually. I might not come out of the seizure, but you'll come out of the trance. The most common thing I hear, I can't be hypnotized. I don't know how many people are actually in this class right now, but basically all of you have admitted to, at some point, going into a light state of trance. But I get this one all the time, and so far I have hypnotized literally thousands of people, and I have only missed one. And the only reason I've missed one is because she had so much other stuff in her mind that we basically converted it from a hypnotherapy session to a life coaching session, because she was vibrating so badly that she just couldn't. Another myth, people can be made to do anything against their will. I can't, as somebody else said, you can't even be hypnotized against your will. The people who you're going off and watching that stage show, because I'm sure some of y'all have seen stage shows. The people are going up there mostly because they want to. A lot of times the hypnotist doesn't even do a suggestibility test. They want to go, they go. They volunteer. And then the hypnotist just works with the people who are willing. And they want to go up and they want to be at least a little bit embarrassed. And even then, if the hypnotist says, hey, can you, I'm trying to think of a good example. At the Georgia Renaissance Festival, there was a hypnotist who always has people act like they're on a rocket ship. I literally watched somebody who was in a light state of trance start to come out just because it went against what he expected, and the hypnotist dismissed him from the stage. He didn't want to pretend like he was a big guy. He was like 6 foot something. He looked like he was a biker. He was like, nope. And I'm like, all right, bye. In a trance, you're unaware of everything. This is a partial truth, and because it depends on the person, and the skill of the hypnotist, and the depth of the trance. I'll be right clear with you on that one. I've had several situations. Well, I shouldn't say several, because I try to not get them to this level of trance, because I think it's kind of mean. But I've had situations where they were completely unaware, as in, I have to keep a clock that I'm looking at, as well as a clock for the client, where they are looking at, which is way above my head. And they've said, hey, when is the session going to start? Honey, you've been gone for 50 minutes. And one time, my personal favorite, and I was briefly mentioning to Haley that this might be brought up, was a situation where I had a smoking cessation person We know he'd been hypnotized before. He successfully wiped out, like, was off smoking for a number of years, and somehow he ended up back doing it again. He comes to my office. He sits down. At the time, I had 3 dogs, one of which was a fairly tall dog, and this guy's in trance, and he's looking like he's in a good spot. My dog decides she's gonna get up, and climbs on top of him, lays on his lap, and starts licking him. And I see him pick his hand up and stroke her, and eventually she jumps off. I wake up, and I'm trying to incorporate this into the session because I knew he had several. He had like 8 dogs or something like that, so maybe he's probably used to it by now. But when he woke up, he did not have any recollection of me starting the session, and he definitely didn't have any recollection of poor Vivi jumping up onto him and licking him. I said, well, I was recording the session, and I said, I'm going to send you an MP3, or whatever I said, whatever file you wanted. So I'm going to send you an MP3. You're going to listen to it. You're going to hear me incorporate the fact that Vivi jumped on you into the thing. Because I had to incorporate that because it was right there. And I still don't think he believes me. I was like, well, I didn't make it up. I mean, I was right there. So I'm also one of the types of people that actually can go completely unaware. But that is a very, very small percentage of the population. 90% of you, if I were to hypnotize y'all, actually probably closer to 95, you will hear almost every single word I say. But you can eventually get to that stage. But it takes work. Here's another one. Trance is like feeling drugged. Not so much. It really does depend on the person, because everybody has a little bit of a different trance experience. Some people feel really, really light. Some people feel really, really heavy. I had a friend who was a medical student who I worked on because she wanted to help with some weight loss. And I was also I had to practice on her. And I said, hello, what was that experience like for you? Because she also said she couldn't be hypnotized. Her answer was, I feel cozy. To this day, I'm not 100% sure what that means, but if you know Caitlin, well, quite frankly, that makes perfect sense to her. But she never could get more than that. But yeah, it's not like feeling good. At least I've never seen that. I've never heard that experience, seen that experience. Maybe for one of you, it is that experience, but I would say that that's highly unlikely. Never in my thousands of hours of hypnosis education have I ever heard anybody do that. Hypnosis is a cure-all. I wish it was. In some ways, because I would be out of a job and I wouldn't have to do anything. But it is in fact not a cure-all for anything. People come in and say, hey, can you fix this in one session? I wish I could help you that way. Anything that does get fixed in a session, we in the hypnotism community call it a hypno-miracle, because it's just so rare. Okay, so here are some things that we do cover in, as far as the research in hypnosis that we do. Let's see, here's some of the more popular ones. Let's see, I am actually certified in a whole bunch of these. I'm certified in smoking, weight loss, ADD, pain. Let's see here, as I look over at my screen, sports, and 2 different levels of PTSD. I've also done several of these that I'm not certified in, but I had a medical referral so I could work on it. I've also worked on IBS. I've worked on, let's see, anger management, confidence. Confidence doesn't require certification. Motivation. I'm in graduate school, so I also get sleep deprivation all the time, and quite frankly, it's because I'm working on myself on that one. So sleep disturbances. I've also worked on, some of the addictions. Mostly I work on sugar addictions. I'm not working on drug addictions because I require some type of referral from it. Other research in hypnosis that they're working on it's getting into the literature are stuff like hot flashes. None of y'all are old enough to be experiencing that just yet. But they're working on a lot of that. They're working on a lot of stuff involving cancer, mostly trying to calm down the nausea so people can go and have chemo. So how on earth does it work? Well, we've been trying to answer that question. We have we've had in the past 10 years finally have at least some information about this, about how it works. I'm sure you've seen the various levels of hypnosis, of brainwaves. All the texts say something slightly different, so this is pretty close. And that's so The thing is that we have noticed that for people who are going into trance, there's a lot of theta and gamma coupling. Basically, you're jumping from theta to gamma to theta to gamma, you're bypassing a few other things. And during an induction, what we do is we're actually trying to get you into alpha and then pushing you into theta. For those of you who've ever seen some of the inductions ask you to roll your eyes back. That's because as your eyes roll back, you start going into alpha, or closing your eyes also do the same thing. And that from there, it's a little bit easier to bump into theta. This gentleman who I'm citing here, Dr. Jensen, he's actually at the University of Washington and has been studying this for a number of years. Let's see, anything else? Let's see. Oh yeah, people with high hypnotizability tend to have more baseline theta. Why? Well, I mean, why do they have the baseline theta? I don't know. But that probably has something to do with their hypnotizability. It wouldn't surprise me at all. There are other people who are wondering, and I don't think I have this on any of the slides, some people are trying to find a specific focal point that actually triggers somebody to go into trance. They've worked out that theory. I don't think they've done any of the work on it yet, but I do know the guy who's doing that. For any of y'all who are real nerds, in case you're ever curious as to the parts of the brain who are usually affected by hypnosis, you gotta get a lot of hippocampus and amygdala activity. So in case any of y'all are that curious, I just had to take like 2 hours of that last week. So there are several hypnotizability scales. You mentioned briefly about hypnotizability. Everybody is hypnotizable. It kind of falls somewhat similar onto a bell curve. I'm an extreme on one end. And some of y'all might be extremes on the other end. And that's okay, because with enough time, anybody can make anybody go into hypnosis. But these are the 3 most common scales. 2 of those are schools that I'm sure some of y'all have recognized. Stanford has been, that scale, I don't even know how many years ago that scale was done, but every few years they check and see if it's still valid. It's more reliable than an IQ test. The IQ tests have to get like reassessed every so often, every like whatever it is, 10 years. The numbers don't seem to be changing, so it seems to be stable over time. Harvard mostly does group, but yes, Harvard University has a very active, or used to have an incredibly active hypnosis field research. They still have a few people. I met somebody last week that was from Harvard. It was kind of cool. It's kind of intimidating because he was from Harvard. But they're still doing that work. The last one on this list is Elkins. That's not a university. That's the gentleman's last name. And he is at Baylor University. The thing that intimidates me the most about that guy is the fact I actually went and read the original article where he introduced this. It turns out that my mentor at SESH, the Society for Clinical Experimental Hypnosis, was actually the first author on that. I didn't know that, but I know it now. And now, if I ever use that scale, I'm going to be contacting Zoltan and go, "Can you help me?" There's also another scale on here that I didn't put on there for a reason, but it's the one that I got trained in. But I don't want to say it's a little sketchy, but these are the better scales to be using. Like the Hypnosis Motivation Institute only uses one scale, which is not a great practice, but they only do that, and I've never understood why that scale would work. But these actually have been scientifically proven. There is the stages of a hypnosis session. Actually, we didn't include the pre-talk on here, but the pre-talk is basically me going, "Hey, what do you know about hypnosis? Let me dispel some myths." So that's not on. There's the induction. That's the start of me going into telling you about trance. I know about a dozen different inductions, from really, really fast ones that I'm not in love with to longer ones that I am in love with. I will always do. I will almost always, when I'm with my clients, I will almost always do an eye fixation and a progressive relaxation. I don't like doing some of those other ones that you see on the stage, because while they're fast, they're kind of, I don't like them performed on me, so I don't do them to other people. A deepener, that's basically very similar to another induction. Somebody actually asked when I was in a workshop last week, what's the difference between an induction and a deepener? Whichever one comes first is the induction. That's what it is. So basically, the deepener just makes you go deeper into trance. It is what it is. From the next stage, we have the time where you do any suggestions that your client wants. Hopefully, you already have an idea of what they want, and you can word it precisely. And there are a few different ways of giving suggestions, either directly or indirectly. Depending on what your personal style is. I tend to do indirect suggestions because I'm very much an Ericksonian, whose name probably means nothing to you, but then that's fine. There's also people who are like, just get up in your face and give you orders. Do not give me orders. That's not going to work. Even in trance, I'm going to kick it out. After the suggestions are given, however is the hypnotist style to give those instructions. Basically, you wake them up. Some clients take longer to wake up than others. I'm one of the ones who take forever and then still will forget how to use an elevator. Yeah, last week I forgot how to use an elevator when a student was working on me. And I'd been reoriented, and they were going through it for 20 minutes. I still was so out of it. I did not come out of trance until I went to sleep that night. And then, again, after that, basically you have a nice little debriefing period, where it's like, hey, what was that like for you? And here's some places to learn more if you are interested in learning more. You're talking about, American Society for Clinical Hypnosis. That's a good place. That's a professional organization, one of the top in the world. There's APA Division 30. That's not a bad place to go to either. SESH, that's the Society for Clinical and Experimental Hypnosis. They are incredibly welcoming to students, and they've got like mentorship programs. They're just an incredible group of people. I wish I had found them 4 years ago, to be honest with you. They were just absolutely incredible. And if you want to study more about hypnosis, there are universities all over the country. Vanderbilt, Harvard, Stanford still doing it, Baylor still doing it. If you want to go to less well-known schools, there's still Naropa and Saybrook, though they're not the highest. They're not Harvard at all by any stretch of the imagination. And I know another one that I should have mentioned in the first group. Adler, that's a pretty decent psychology program. That's actually a fairly well-known school. That's of pretty decent quality. One of their faculty members was one of my faculty members for that workshop. So I think that was about 30 minutes for me, I'm hoping. So if you have any questions, I can take as many questions as you want. So, if you don't have questions or you're too embarrassed to ask, you can feel free to run up here, grab a business card, and just email me privately. Or you could email one of your lovely teachers or teaching assistants, and I will get back to you through them too. That's another option. Do you have any questions? Well, which one of you wants to go first? I don't care which one of y'all go first.
What kind of patients do you normally see?
What kind of patients do I normally see? I see a lot of anxiety, mostly. A lot of stress management, a lot of anxiety. I do occasionally still see smoking. I will be very honest with you. I'm not the biggest smoking cessation fan because they come in smelling out my office. That's the only objection I have to them. But I see a lot of IBS as well. But that luckily goes well with anxiety. Unfortunately for the poor hypnotist, if you're seeing anxiety and IBS back to back, you might be falling asleep during your own sessions. Which, yes, I did. I had 4 sessions in 5 hours one time. I now have to put in a buffer between my sessions. I had 3, and they all do have the same very calming induction. By the 3rd one I was doing, I'm convinced I fell asleep during the session, but I don't think my client noticed. And as soon as she woke up and reoriented, I was like, how am I gonna just contact me when you need anything? My office is in my house. I just walked around the other room. I set a timer to wake me up for the next session, and I went to sleep. I had a great sleep. It did not feel like 45 minutes, but it was. Did you have one?
You mentioned that you were in a trance and unable to use an elevator.
I completely forgot how to use an elevator.
The duration of that lasted until you went to bed that night?
Yeah, that's not uncommon. If you are a somnambulist, traditionally you will wake up pretty much and you will be fully functional and ready to go within 30 seconds. I am a somnambulist, and the somnambulists you need to work harder on to make sure they reorient properly. Very frequently when I've had to deal with, like one person didn't, see, I was being worked on by a student, so this was literally the first time they ever did anything. And so and I had more, and I said, you will need to take more time to wake me up. Traditionally, I've had to. One time I would go back from Aiken, South Carolina to Augusta, Georgia, because I was still out of it. That's very dangerous.
So that was my question. What are the safety concerns if someone is not officially awoken?
The safety concerns is that you better not be driving. And they actually looked at me, some of the other students said, I hope he's not driving. I said, no, I'm staying upstairs.
So how
What
do you...
when I'm doing a trance and I know you're driving, I will put in several post-hypnotic suggestions so that if you are not awake by the time you are I'm going to try to reorient you properly. And I always have buffer time. I always include the buffer time because my hypnotist sometimes didn't do so. And I put in several things to make sure that they're 100% up by the time they're on. I put in 3 separate post-hypnotics, like, okay, when you cross that threshold, you're going to be better. When you're going to be more awake. By the time you do that, if you're not awake, then it's going to be just like you took a cup of coffee. So I always make sure that if I know they're a somnambulist, I was like, do you need to stay? You can sit on my couch for as long as you like. Do not drive.
So how do you ensure that they are awake?
Well, sometimes I'll say, I'll do the scale of 1 to 10. Hey, 10 is you have just had like 5 cups of coffee and you're about to bounce out of this room. Where are you? And I'll ask them, I was like, how do you feel? And if they say relaxed, okay, that's fine. You can feel relaxed. That's part of the goal. I said, and I always remind them of that. That if you are not fully oriented, I have multiple places for you to sit. I said, and I don't have a rush. And if I know somebody is a somnambulist already, I ask them to bring somebody just in case. I think that's the safest route because it scared me when I drove back from Aiken to Augusta. I missed like 5 turns. And I almost could not get home because luckily I had a GPS because I ended up getting lost driving somewhere I know where I live, usually. I said something to my hypnotist after that, and he started keeping me a little bit extra. But that was a screw up on his part. That's why I don't want to do that to my clients. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you do group settings?
I've done small group settings. My biggest so far has been 4 people. I don't do, the thing is that it all depends on what they all want. I've noticed that some people, the people who are highly hypnotizable, you're going to get them regardless. But there are so much of a mixture that I want to make sure that everybody gets enough attention. I found that individualized sessions make it easier. But if it's like a small group, if it's like 4 people, I can manage 4 people very easily. So, one time I had a person, I had somebody who called me for a group session, and I did do a group session, and I had somebody who was low hypnotizable, high hypnotizable, one that was kind of moderate, and I also had their father, who apparently never took any of the suggestibility tests, but he fell asleep, so I'm assuming that was a good sign. And I said, okay, so I just focused on the 3 of them, and I noticed, okay, the somnambulist went first, as one would expect. The person who was, she was a high, she would, boop. Medium I was focusing on, she was like, all right, well, I see the medium starting to go. But I was mostly spending a lot of time on the low, who had said, I can't be hypnotized. For somebody who couldn't be hypnotized by the end of that session, she certainly could have fooled me. So yeah, I do them, but it's usually smaller group ones. I'm not doing 100 people, that'd be, unless they really want to do it, So, anybody else? You have a few minutes. I have no idea what the actual time is. How many actual minutes you have?
About 12 minutes.
You have 12 minutes. Or you can also stand up if I can't see you and if I'm ignoring you somehow. I didn't hypnotize any of you, so I know y'all have the ability to stand. You all can come up with that. Miss Haley.
You told me that you could tell that I was going into a trance-like state before. How could you tell?
Okay, so there are several different things to take into account. Like I've seen several people here go briefly in and briefly out. In your case, I was actually could tell by your eyes. There are actually some changes that go on around here, and then you also were changing your skin was changing color slightly. You can usually tell it much easier on people who are paler and whiter. Other cases are a little bit harder, but you can still do it because I've still had to. And if I can actually watch the blood flow change in your hands. So those are just a few things. But you also got paler, and your eyes were head glazed over. I could go more, but I don't think anybody else wants to hear all the things that I can. But those are at least a few things. Like I've seen at least a few people go in, the ones who are not paying up, those who are not on their phones. You know. Just smile. She's so happy. I didn't hypnotize her to be this happy. She's like this all the time, but I think y'all know that. Now, it's called pick on me again. Don't worry, you'll get back to me. Yeah. She'll get back. Anybody else? I can sit here and do whatever if I'm too scary. I don't want to be scary. What do you want me to do? Do you have questions?
Do you want to do a demonstration?
Only people want, wait, do I have a question? Hold on, sir.
You said after one session, it was like
If people were cured in one section, it's so rare that we call it a hypnomia miracle.
Yeah, so like on average, how long does it take for a patient to see results?
That depends. Sometimes they will start to see results after the first session. It depends on what they're asking for. So I had a 2-hour person who was doing sports improvement. And for my sports improvement guy, he actually decided to do a 2-hour session, which by the way is really expensive. But you know, it's you're in trance basically 3 times as long, since I don't have to do a pre-talk on you twice. I just do it once, and I do one induction, and boop, you're down for like an hour and a half. He actually had some really good results that first day. He was a semi-professional pool player, and he had been having some issues. Like, people were getting into his head, and we worked on that. And that night, like an hour after the session, because I got an email maybe 4 hours later saying that he just did a competition. He just 2 separate competitions, like back to back, and he won like $1,400. Not that's combined. So I was like, well, wow, cool. And so I guess I fixed his getting out of his head situation. But if you're talking about something like smoking, for example, that usually takes more than 1 session. You're talking maybe 3 or 4. But you'll usually start seeing results after 1, but just not complete done. And my weight loss is like 8, and that is really hard to keep people going, because they've got to, all of a sudden you're not going to wake up and go, whoops, I just dropped 10 pounds. That'd be kind of cool though. Wouldn't it be? Unless you're me, in which case I accidentally dropped like 13 pounds in a week because I wasn't paying attention. Got anything else, man? All right, that's cool. I mean, if people want a demonstration, you can ask me for one. If not, I don't want to waste or force anybody to do anything. Oh,
Can we do a demonstration?
do you want a demonstration? If anybody who wishes to leave, I'm not offended. That's cool. I'll give you a few minutes to do that.
I want to volunteer.
I didn't say I'm not bringing you up. I'm going to be just doing a basic induction. Well, also you have to remember also this is being recorded, and that could be there could also be some legal issues there. Like, I gave permission for her to be recording me because I'm also going to be using it too. But the thing is that you can still be participating in this. I'm just not bringing you up and making you cluck like a chicken. I save that for Haley.
He's never done that.
I'm going to make you cluck like a chicken in a few weeks. Watch it. She's so much fun. So, but anybody who wants to do it, how many minutes do we have?
8.
8.
9.
9? 8, 9. Okay.
8, 9.
That's fine. If anybody wants to do one, I will do one that's much more easy. I hate that eye roll thing that Haley attempted to see me do a few days ago. I don't know, many years ago. If anybody who wants to do heavy, I think I'm going to end up doing heavy light. If anybody wants to do that, just stand up and we'll just do it that way. Or not. Or do you want me to just do a progressive relaxation on y'all? Which, I don't know. Does anybody have tests today? Nobody has tests today?
I have a test.
You have a test?
Yes.
Okay, would you like a progressive relaxation then?
Huh?
Are you stressed out for the test?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, well, I know a lot of people are stressing out, so why don't I just do a progressive, that it's not very obvious, you can enjoy it anyway, you don't have to stand up, you don't have to do anything, and quite frankly, everybody seems to like this one, because this is... You're okay? It's all right. So we'll just do a progressive relaxation. If any, here's your last few minutes, I see a few people going out, and that's fine, I am not offended at all. Okay. It means all y'all get to have some fun too. You feel stressed out? Yeah, okay, good. I like helping. That's what I do. Say, I want y'all to, you can put your stuff aside.
I'm gonna have my hands free.
Oh, you're ready? Okay. You can have your hands free. Just remember to give you back your clicker, because I'm going to probably be moving stuff. Okay. I'm just so used to doing this, and if I don't want to do this on myself and drop things, that would be bad. Okay, so we're going to just start off by, anybody who wants to participate, we're going to start doing it by what I just mentioned earlier about an eye fixation and then a progressive relaxation. Okay? And I'm going to just, because this is a huge group session, I'm not going to be able to analyze every single person by what they're doing. So some of y'all might not go down as deep as you would be if it was an individual. Some people are already ready. Okay, so I want you to first start to stare at a point on the wall. And you can just, it can be even a word, questions, or not. I want you to just try your best to not blink and to just watch. Now, if your eyes are beginning to get tired at all at any point, you may close them and keep them closed. And I want you to, in your mind's eye, start to picture a great big ball of light. It can be whatever color you want it to be. Whether that be white, blue, pink, purple, or any of the other colors of the rainbow. And I want you to visualize that feeling of comfort coming from that light. And as you do that, just try to focus on the sound of my voice as best you can. You may notice other things going off, and that's okay. Because the most important thing here is your comfort and relaxation. I want you to visualize that ball of light and comfort going down to the tip of your toes. You may notice that one of your toes, one of your feet becoming more relaxed than others. And that's okay. You can allow that to just relax. You may notice that a ball starts to creep up your ankles. And if you'd like, you can roll your ankles a bit and relax and get any stress removed. Just enjoy that comfort. And you can allow that comfort and ball to creep up to the lower part of your leg, and deeper and deeper. Just allowing all the comfort and relaxation and calmness. And then you see that as it goes over your knees and up into your lower, up into your upper legs, becoming more and more relaxed. And if you wish, you let that comfort roll up over your hips, lower back, just relaxing as best you can. And then you can allow that to go up the middle part of your back and the upper part of your back. Up into your shoulders, your hands. And now do a body scan, if you like, as it continues to go up and down your body, relaxing you on every day. And you can continue to let that ball relax any part of your knee. It goes up past your head, relaxing it more and more. And I want to invite you, most of you are feeling probably fairly relaxed. I want you to invite you to keep this feeling of relaxation for the rest of the day. You'll all do what anybody who has a test, you're doing wonderfully on it. You're going to have a great day. And for those of you who are done, for those of you who are in trance, and you are, if you are not, by the time you leave this classroom, while you are still going to be relaxed, you're going to make sure that before you come anywhere near a car, you're going to be fully awake. You're going to start to wake up as you stand up and go out the door. You're going to wake up even more when you get past that door, even more when you go out of the building. By any time you're anywhere within a few hundred feet of a car, you're going to be fully awake and ready to go on and enjoy the day. And I'd like to thank you all for your attendance. I'm just going to do a little snap for those who are still down. 1, 2, coming back into the room. 3, waking up more and more. 4 and 5, with eyes open, wide awake. I'd like to thank you all for having me. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for having me, and for Haley for passing phone through there.
Thank you.
I don't know how we're doing that. This is called Pick on Haley Day.